Hey, this is with me and him. That,
excuse me?
Don't worry about it. I paid for that, my money. This was for our big champion, not, what are you?
It doesn't matter, because all that matters to you is that I keep your company afloat. You see, you may have bought this, but I own it. So, go back to the flash of the past you are.
Okay.
You tripping? You're a jerk. You should have known better than that.
That's right. Get him, boys. What the? Oh, the jewels. The little brat. What the hell was that?
Come here, you twerps.
Get out of here.
Ain't nobody talking when I'm talking, fellas, so shut the fuck up.
The dog is belly up.
I'll drop a headlock, got you in the gridlock. Catch me in the back line, I can make the mat rock. Backdrop, hip toss, abdominal stretch. Now they wondering who we bombing on next, yes.
The dog is belly up.
Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women. That is good.
Oh, Stephen, there's one more thing I had to mention.
What is it?
I love you.
The dog is belly up.
If they don't give me proper credit, I just walk away.
Patos locos forever.
Forever!
Forever.
Full disclosure, news and commentary number 164. 164, 164, 164, 164. That conflict with Bryce Cannon and the rest of the exotic youth took place at the craziest Georgia wrestling show to take place this year, IWE. Biggest crowd they ever had. And the incident with Joe Black and that fan, 1 million views. Cornette's shit take. It was a shit take. Just classic, like Cornette. I have no idea what's going on. I'm just going to speak off the cuff and be a total hypocrite. Fuck him. Wild. But something else happened this week in Georgia wrestling. If IWE was the wildest show for the most rapidly growing show, we got to talk about the other records that were set this last weekend and what's being set up for the near future. Welcome to Full Disclosure 164. It's really early in the morning. It's 4 in the morning. Why am I up? Because I'm going to work from 8 in the morning until midnight at 2 different jobs. And I want to get this thing out. That's what I do. What is our commentary about? Commentary you might find it motivating. You might find it maddening. You might find it all kind of, oh, my hair is awesome. I'm getting it cut tomorrow. Excited about that. But yeah, you have that to look forward to. Okay. Let's talk about some stuff. Bloop. That is Pro Wrestling Action. Florida group. They're going to celebrate their 1-year anniversary. Is that a big deal? Absolutely. They've had nothing but packed sellout shows at this particular bar, Tuffy's Bottle, and I got to go to a bunch of their early shows, but now that I work 3 jobs, I've been unable to. But I'm going to do my level best to be there for their 1-year anniversary, which is at a different locale. Are they going to pack that place? I would imagine that they are. It's a very exciting show. I just wanted to give them a shout out because, you know, I tend to cover more of the Florida scene. though my heart is clearly in Georgia, and I get back there. It's also been a year since I did that tour where I went to GIPW, IWE, which has led to me working with them, and Pro South. Super cool stuff, right? But let's talk about the other pro wrestling group called Action. I want to put up their poster to sort of mark the time and to talk about a report hasn't come out yet, though I'm sure it will because Jabari was there and Duke was there. By the way, the dual reports of Southern States from Larry and Jabari is as cool coverage as you're going to get. We're going to talk about Southern States as well because they're due to have their first real show, and it's exciting. And the combine process, I think, is going to lead to, if they can stick to doing 2 shows a month, and the process in which to get in, and the kind of energy and spirit of it, I think they're going to do well. Now, promotion has always been the weak point. Can they get people to show up to this show in light of how inundated the wrestling scene is? And I say that like it's a negative, and it's not. We're going to talk about all kinds of good stuff going on, but I'd be remiss to not give center stage here to Action Wrestling, because they had their show at a high school, and they had 700 people. So the biggest crowd, this is the record, the biggest crowd in 2022 in Georgia wrestling is going to Action, right? Mucha Lucha, though, is set to do, they had a show that already did right, so it's Mucha Lucha, but amongst the other majors, Action's got the biggest crowd at 700. Will Southern Honor be able to top it? I don't think so, but I'm sure they're going to do their level best to prove me wrong. But as we go into the summer, think about this. As we're going into the summer, where people's crowds are tending to dip, we've now got Shindig coming up, which they had a great show to set up Shindig, and it was pure setup show. About 200 people watched. You can read about the recap on gwhnewsandnotes.blogspot.com. But Action drew 700. And what did they see? A great bell-to-bell. As I was getting texts about the show as it was going on, people said it, and Larry and I said this years ago, that bell-to-bell, it is Action Wrestling. Now, Gary Lamb and Southern Honor and other people have taken umbrage with this, because obviously it rankles anybody who is competitive and cares about what they do, as Gary does, as Dylan does, when they hear that anybody else is number one at anything. But Action is still bell-to-bell the best, and they proved it. And they did it in front of a humongous crowd who was into what they were doing. So congratulations. Speaking of into what you're doing, Deep South. Deep South drawing 125 in a show that a lot of the participants in the show said was the most fun that they've had this year. So they get a title as well, right? Is that the most fun show is that the most fun crowd to wrestle in front of? Certainly there's a number of groups, and this is something that shouldn't be underestimated. I said that the average booking going on right now is better than it has ever been in Georgia wrestling. Right, the average level of the booking amongst the majors. But I'll say this too. It has been a long time since crowds have been this into various groups. The Southern Honor crowd are lunatics. Southern Fried crowd are lunatics. IWE crowd are lunatics. They're into it. Action Wrestling's crowd, into the shit that they do. Deep South's crowd, into the shit they do. When you have Nausism Wrestling, Zach Mosley, fuck Zach Mosley for hitting me, but beyond that, when you got guys who are basically doing 6 to 8 minutes of grappling in the beginning of the match and the crowd is completely into it, you've got the right audience. And people are doing it right now. And crowds are into their thing. When I catch Pro South on their YouTube channel, their crowd is into it. It's no longer these like long lulls. People are feeling what people are putting out. I imagine Southern States is going to do very well with their crowd that is going to be into. They know what they're getting, and they are into it. Now, that doesn't mean that every show is necessarily working. And I'm cool with that too. I'm cool with experimenting, right? That sounded like it sounded like. So, for example, on Fight, modern age grappling. I mean, you had 40 people looking, and the show was an hour and 20 minutes. How many people ordered it on Fight for $15? Probably not many. Even though you had some, like, Gresham and Black Baron and stuff like that. I just don't think you can call it a success, right? British Rounds rules. Now, they already announced another show, so they're sort of stuck. But I gotta say, I looked at the concept, and there's nothing sexy about it that jumped off at me. And in light of Terminus, which is incredibly successful, and the Vendetta shows, which are incredibly successful, they were due for one that kind of fizzled. And I feel like this probably fizzled. They're going to give it another shot, but they need a hook, right? It is entertainment at the end of the day, and watching dudes roll around for an hour and 20 minutes probably just doesn't have an appeal. But we'll see what they can get going. Pro South has definitely got their thing going. Damian Seratone, always a fan of his, right? He's two-time Pro South champion, defeating Cameron Keast. And Seratone is also the New Era and Pro South champion, which is crazy to think that through him we've sort of unified Alabama wrestling, who are always at each other's throats. So it's just so good to see that they're working. If not together, there's kind of like a detente going on. Seratone is the only Grand Slam champion in Pro South history, by the way. And one of those guys that I think doesn't get mentioned a lot, but absolutely should. I thought the stuff on GWH News and Notes, and Bill Barron sent it to me as well, but the stuff of FTR against Master and Machine with Foley and Bill Barron's getting into it. I mean, it's just such a great time. APW continues to do their thing. Jeremy Vane's kid winning the North Georgia Championship. Very, very cool. I want to talk briefly about Nature Boy Paulie getting injured by the lawnmower. The thing that his wife put up about how he's too stubborn to go to the ER. And the reaction of people to Paulie. Now, if you think this is me gonna be me finger wagging, going like everybody's so bad for making fun of Paulie from getting hurt, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about what does that tell you when a dude gets hurt and the universal reaction is to make fun of it. It tells you that that guy has had a legacy of being a piece of shit and not a very good person. And look at me. Let's be honest. When you hear this story, right, and, the update on Paul, he's very bruised and sore. If you know, you know. Paul is a very stubborn man. He has 2 TV shows today for Wrestle Jam 10. By the way, I didn't hear anything about that. Please continue to pray he would not go to the ER. I finally got him up the hill and into the house and in bed. I have iced and used heat all over his body. He's having some trouble breathing. I think he may have some cracked ribs. Hurt his bad arm, neck and back hurting. 1 laceration on his lower back. Got a burn on his back. I assume the muffler got him. Not on his head, so I had to wake him a lot. Lots of Tylenol and ibuprofen. We don't understand his stomach issues. Please pray for my stubborn man. Paul said the show must go on. Look at me. Let's be honest. Did you assume once you read this that some or most or all of this story, in some way, shape, or form, was some form of con or hustle or exaggeration or work that either his wife is in on or he was working her as well. Of course you did. Now, if this whole thing is true, and it is as it is, that's terrible. But it's terrible not in the sense that I would assume that some part of the story was faked and that it had something to do with WrestleJam 10. But that he's such a piece of shit that you would think that it was a lie. Our wannabe mayor. And I mean, what have we heard about that fucking show? Did it happen? Did anybody show up? Please let me know, because I'm curious. And please make sure your legacy is not something that when you get hurt, people inclination is to make fun of it and to assume that some aspects of it are faked. Jesus, what a fucking legacy that is. Wild stuff. Man, when you look at Georgia wrestling, folks, if you don't understand that things are super, really, really super cool right now, I don't know what to fucking tell you. It is just mind-blowing. All right, let's get to the commentary. Gonna have a little bit of a tease here. Bloop. Whoa, that picture. Jericho put up that picture. Him, Stu Hart, Nancy, aka Woman, and Chris Benoit. That picture triggers a lot with me, and I'm sure it does with a lot of people. And you got to understand, there's a generation for whom Bret Hart is their favorite wrestler, the greatest wrestler. And then there's a generation for whom Chris Benoit definitely holds that title as well, regardless of what has happened since. And what this picture did was it reminded me of my encounter with Chris Benoit and Nancy, which led to us having a meal together. And if that story interests you, then I encourage you to sign up for my Patreon. I've been doing these Platinum Pinfalls, covering 3 stories about pro wrestling and a video add-on since January 13th. And I thought about what a big deal that is and what it means to me. And, you know, the people that know that I work so much just go like, is it kind of crazy that you put one out every day on average? Now, I had a long run where I didn't do them because I was in the midst of getting all these jobs and training, and it was madness, but I still made up for the time. And now I'm determined to keep up with it every day. It's another reason I'm up at 4 in the morning. Actually, I got up at 3 so I could get a bunch of stuff done. Why? Because it's what I want to do. Because I'm not just a guy who just works and hangs out with my kids, right? I'm a guy who, I love this pro wrestling shit. And what this commentary is about is, you gotta fucking ask for what you want. What do I want? I want people to sign up for my Patreon. I don't care if it's a fucking $1. You're gonna get the Platinum Pinfalls. You're gonna get other crazy shit that I put up. But more than that, what do I want? When I listen to someone like Jim Cornette, or even like Brian Alvarez or Dave Meltzer or other people, I'm kind of stunned at the shit takes that are out there in different ways and shapes and forms. And I think to myself, fucking, I can be out there giving takes on stories from a perspective of somebody who actually did pro wrestling shit, as a couple of them did, but also with this eye of accepting what is new, as well as the integrity of some of the old school. And I think we need that voice, and I don't think that voice is out there, frankly. And I want to be that voice, and I am that voice. I just want to grow and expand and continue to do my thing. In short, you don't ask, you don't get. And so I'm asking, fucking that Patreon, sign up for that shit. Try it out. You don't fucking like it, drop it. God knows people have. But many more people have kept it. I have people that have been on that Patreon since it fucking started, and it's wonderful. And I'm proud of it. I'm going to give you... so my tease is, on tomorrow, the 24th, the stories that I'm covering are about control your narrative fucking coming back to Orlando and my perspective on that and what I know about that. And this Chris Benoit story, which is, if you've never heard it, it's fucking mind-blowing. And it's bizarre. And it ties into, you know, what I used to do, which is to, while I was pro wrestling, I would write for different wrestling sites. And how that led to this encounter and this meeting, and which I'll always fucking remember. And I get to share the story with you, and it's super unique. Because what people don't have, Jim Cornette and the rest of them, they don't have my perspective. And that's what I'm offering. For as low as a fucking $1 a month, for crying out loud. And I'm going to put the one I did yesterday up here, so you can get a sample of what I did, what I do. That's how we're going to end. But in short, you don't ask, you don't get. And a lot of people deride the wrestlers for going like, here's the people that I want to wrestle. And, you know, promoters make it happen, right? We've all seen these posts, and different people cringe when they see it. The promoters make it happen thing I always think is kind of ridiculous. But this idea of asking for what you want is not fucking ridiculous. I think the instinct is very sound. And instead of people always just like shitting on people for fucking asking what they want or saying what they want. Now, this whole thing of like, put it out in the universe to manifest and all this kind of shit, that's whatever. But fucking asking people for what you want and not being too cool for school about shit, there's nothing wrong with it. And at one point, I think, like, different leagues, for example, were sort of, like, almost ashamed to, like, let's see if this rings true. The ones who do the best job promoting are the ones who are shameless about being promoters. And that's the ultimate compliment to Gary Lamb and to people like Ricardo, who have no problems fucking promoting. Because it's all sales, guys. And that includes being a pro wrestler. And pro wrestlers, they're like, they won't even click share on a poster. And there's a reason for that. People are afraid to ask because they're afraid to get rejected. But you gotta fucking ask. That's what separates successful from not successful. And there are people who are afraid when they get opportunities for exactly what they say they fucking want to do, who turn it down because there's a part of them that's afraid to ask and put themselves out there in any way, shape, or form. I'm telling you, as a 50-year-old man, you gotta fucking ask. And you gotta put yourself out there. So enjoy this edition of the Platinum Pinfall that I'm putting up. Sign up for that motherfucking thing and get to see that fucking Chris Benoit story tomorrow. I promise you, nobody else has anything like it. Because what you get is the best piece of me when it comes to pro wrestling. Period. Now go out, ask for what you fucking want, and go get that shit. It's really no more difficult than that. If I can work 80 fucking hours a week to make my life something better, and my kid's life something better, then what's fucking holding you back? Hopefully nothing at this point forward. Go get 'em, motherfuckers. This has been Full Disclosure. Welcome to the Platinum Pinfall. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to the Platinum Pinfall. I've because of my work schedule on the weekend, I've gotten in the habit now of doing these in the morning, as you can see, and it's working out really well. I'm planning them just a day or two in advance. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself and plan 3 or 4 days because I want to stay topical as much as possible. But let's just jump into it. Boop! By the way, to the people who have commented that they really like me putting in my own sound effects and stuff, thank you. Yesterday I dug into, by the way, I looked at how long I've been doing the daily Platinum Pinfalls. Now, Platinum Pinfall is a thing that I've done over the course of the last couple of years, just once in a while when there were like 3 stories that I thought were worth covering that didn't quite fit into a, but wait, there's more, or something like that. But doing them every day has happened since January 13th. It's like over 4 months of doing this shit. It's wild. Now, I had a couple of, well, anyway, but where I have technically not missed a session, you know. And now I hope to just keep up with it day by day. What is that? That's Becky Lynch. And, you know, everybody knows, well, everybody in wrestling knows about the Sasha Banks Naomi walkout and the WWE's weird reaction. We've covered that, parts of that for the last 2 days. But this, I thought, was an interesting reaction. So they decided to go with Becky Lynch and Asuka since they had been wrestling for the main event, instead of just cutting out Sasha and Naomi and just having, it was originally supposed to be 6 people wrestling each other, but instead they went with Asuka and Becky Lynch, the theory being they've wrestled each other a bunch on house shows, so they'll be ready to put a match together. Since apparently they give them 8 hours to put matches together, according to that WWE press release, which I found fucking really weird thing to say. We get 8 hours to work out your fucking shit, that's too much time. Especially for what they're doing. They're not doing anything. But anyway. So Becky Lynch offered I should lose to Asuka, which I think is the ultimate crafty move on her end. Not saying she did it purely for the like, oh, that way people will love me and blah, 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 blah. But it was the right call for the show. I thought it was a right tone to set, and her selling the mist at the end was one of those really great moment things, and it puts a little steam on her and Asuka at house shows when they continue to work each other. Again, and it's a case of a wrestling person, Becky Lynch, making a wrestling decision that's good for the wrestling show. And what's stunning is they have a bunch of writers that don't seem to be able to do any of that. Boop. This story fucking pains the shit out of me. Because fuck Vince Russo, but when you're fucking right, you're right. But only he can manage to be, even when he's right, he says the next thing, which makes what he said that was right seem really wrong, because he's a fucking idiot. So I'm going to go ahead and, I rarely do this, but I'm going to actually read it to make sure I get it right. You can't say unprofessional. This is in response to the WWE press release about calling Sasha and Naomi unprofessional for walking out, right? You can't say unprofessional with a straight face when your structure is so effed up that you can't give your performers a script days in advance. That's the ultimate definition of unprofessional. You know what? He's fucking right. If this is a scripted show and why are they still tearing stuff up and rewriting stuff the day of the show? They should have things set. It would make things much smoother. It would make things much easier for the talent. They keep going on and on and on that they're content providers and not professional wrestling and TV and blah, 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 blah. He's right. They should have, in fact, they should have things booked out so far in advance that they have a rough guideline of what they're doing day to day. Like, I did that. I did that when we were doing even just a weekly show, but when we were doing twice a week, I had things mapped out in my mind where things were going to go. That way you can twist and turn it and what's the end game and blah, blah, blah. Not that you don't have to adapt sometimes, but at least I knew where fucking things were going. And I had, you know, the main event of our big event of the year, Sacred Ground 3, mapped out in my mind before Sacred Ground 2. And we got there. So he's right about that. And then he has the fucking worst analogy ever. Wonder if they handed Brando the Godfather script hours before they shot. Yeah, it's not The Godfather. Godfather is a movie based on a book. Like, there's no similarity. God, I fucking hate Vince Russo so much. So much. Boop! Cody and Seth. And we mentioned that Becky and Asuka have been wrestling each other a lot. Now, in the days of wrestling where you did a big house show circuit, this was very common. But look at how many times Cody is wrestling Seth Rollins. 1, 2, 3. Austin Theory. That was TV. Right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Both of them on teams, we'll call it 9. 10, 11. Kevin Owens by countout. 12, 13, 14. Defeats Miz. Defeats Kevin Owens. 15. Holy shit. That was leading up to WrestleMania Backlash. So they wrestled each other 15 fucking times. Now, the interesting thing is the reaction of people, which is like, dude, that's fucking too many. Back in the day, that was really common. That way you had a real chemistry with somebody. Wrestling used to be much more like vaudeville, in that you would do kind of the same things again and again and again. Now, in this day and age where people release stuff and, you know, you have access to your phone, you can release stuff instantly online, they've stopped doing it. I actually think it's a good practice. And I think it's fine. I just think the reaction of, like, they wrestled each other 15 times. If you, an easy example is if you look at one of Jim Cornette's books about the Midnight Express, where he goes into details, like, here's our, you know, our receipts and here's our check stubs on what we got paid for different tours. It's very fascinating stuff. But he also goes into, like, here's the house show circuit that we did, where the Midnight Express wrestled, you know, the Fantastics again and again and again and again, and here are the results. You really got a sense of, like, that's what you would do. You would wrestle the same guy around the horn. Then you would get that match where it was really good, and then when you did it on big events that were televised or pay-per-views or whatnot, then you were really sharp and ready to go. I think it's a good practice, and I think it's really weird that our reaction now is like, oh, that match is stale. You can't have it both ways. You want something to be really, really good. You gotta refine it and tweak it on the road. I totally approve. And then finally, Casey and Brandon Kirk are deathmatch wrestlers, and they faced off against each other, and they're the fucking coolest. That's an article I eventually want to write once I get time to write fucking articles. I'm finishing up one on pro wrestling, but another one is going to be like In Search of Cool, and Casey and Brandon are the coolest couple in wrestling. And just take a look at this shit and fucking enjoy it. In any case, this has been the Platinum Pinfall. 1, 2, 3. Yay!
Psycho driver, fuck your life! Count to 1,000! What the fuck?